Hi, good morning. My name is Jose Gutierrez. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Westlands Water District. And today we're going to discuss water supply and in particular go into precipitation for the current water year and talk about our allocation and what we might expect going forward as we move through the next few months and the remainder of the wet season. So this year has been below average for precipitation, and that's shown here in this bar chart. The water year starts in October 1 of any year, and October of 2019 was very low for precipitation, barely measurable, 1/10 of an inch. Our best month was December, and that one was above average at about almost 10 inches, when the average is about 9.2 inches. November was below average, about 3 inches compared to 6.6 average. And January was also below average at 4.9 inches compared to 8.9 inches for average. Now, February is typically one of the largest months for precipitation, and you can see here measured only 2/10 of an inch when the average is 8.2, so almost no precipitation in the 8-station index for February. And so far March has also been dry. In comparison, the 5-station index, or the San Joaquin 5-station index, had a similar pattern. Its best month was December, and you can see that for January, February, and March, there's been some trace in March, but very little precipitation in those 3 months. That's better illustrated here in this chart. The blue shade represents the average, and these different lines just represent different water years. Now we're currently tracking for the current water year at 18.1 inches total. It's been very dry with no precipitation. You can see how this line has flattened out from the end of January through the beginning of March. We've had little or no precipitation in that 8-station index. And if I show you for the 5-station index for San Joaquin, it's actually been worse. I mean, we've added about 2 inches from the end of December through the beginning of March. So more than 2 months, we've only added 2 inches of precipitation total in that 5-station index. So very little precipitation in these last couple months for the 5-station index. And actually, I think February might go down as one of the driest months on record. Now, what does all this mean? Obviously, it means very little rain that's being accumulated in the reservoirs, but it also translates to very little snow. And I think I've said this before, snow is our best reservoir, and that snow resides in the Sierra, and it's stored during the wintertime when we don't need it, and then when spring and summer comes, it melts, fills the reservoirs, and helps us maintain our agriculture here in the Central Valley, because those reservoirs store the water that is then exported down to Westlands and other Cvp south of Delta contractors. But as illustrated here in these 3 snow water content charts, the northern Sierra is sitting at about 40%, and it actually gets worse the farther south you go. The southern Sierra is down at about 33% for this time, and the snow water content is actually declining. I think maybe in December we were a little bit below average, but still, close to average. But since then, I don't think there's been very much accumulation in snow water content. So that's not very promising. Now, at the end of February 25th, the Bureau of Reclamation announced its initial allocation, and that allocation was 15% for Cvp south of Delta contractors, Westlands and other contractors that receive their water from the Central Valley Project. Now, with precipitation and snow water content being so dismal, how was Reclamation able to provide us with a 15% allocation? And actually, I think Reclamation deserves a lot of credit for their expertise with the modeling and the forecasting to actually provide us with that 15% allocation. I think they were able to do that because of the conditions of our Central Valley Cvp reservoirs. Our largest Cvp reservoir is Shasta, and you can see here, this is the blue shade again, represents the average. Shasta is currently sitting at about 3.5 million acre feet, and that's actually above average for this time of year. It's about 10% above average. And Shasta isn't the only Cvp reservoir that's above average. Here's a table that summarizes the Northern California Cvp reservoirs of the large ones. As I mentioned, Shasta is sitting at about 109% of average for the state. New Maloney's is about 125% of average for the state. San Luis Reservoir, that's the off-stream reservoir that's near Los Banos, where reclamation stores water when it's pumping, when the water is available during the wintertime, stores it during this winter, and then drains it during the summer and spring to provide water supply for ag service contractors. That one is sitting at about 68% of average for the state, so below average because of the dry hydrology, but still, it's in decent shape. But overall, total northern Cvp reservoirs are at 110% of average. So the conditions of our reservoirs, because last year the last water was actually above average, and I can show you that here. The 2018-2019 daily precip total for the last water was about 71 inches of total precipitation. So because that year was so wet, it increased storage in our reservoirs, and we were able to leave that water year with storage in pretty healthy conditions. Going back to the allocation, because of the conditions of our reservoirs, reclamation was able to provide us with that 15% allocation. And it wasn't only the reservoir storage, there are new biops in place now. And because of those new biops and because of the conditions of the reservoirs, reclamation was able to provide us with that 15% allocation because the new biops provide some increased operational flexibility, which improves water supply. But not only that, it actually will help protect listed species even better going forward. So that's a summary of the current allocation and the current state of reservoirs and the snow water content in the Sierra. So what can we expect going forward? How's the rest of the year going to shape up? Now going back to my 8-station index chart, this is where we are today, sitting at 18.1 inches. Now if the remainder of the water year is average, if we project up and see what we could expect going forward, we could expect about 15 inches of additional precipitation in the 8-station index and potentially about 12 inches of additional precipitation in the 5-station index. So we could end up the year with about 33 inches of precip. That's still going to be below average. But if we have a miracle March, an awesome April, and a miraculous May, maybe we get closer to the average precipitation. So, I'm hopeful that Mother Nature will bless us with increased rain, and I'm hopeful we'll get closer to the average, and that will provide reclamation the ability to increase our allocation. I don't expect the allocation to increase from 15% in March, but if we have an average or above average March, possibly in April when reclamation reruns its models, possibly in April they'll come out with an allocation increase. So at this point, we'll wait and see. Hope you enjoyed today's conversation, and until next time, Jose Gutierrez. Have a nice day.